There's a lawsuit happening in Florida against the DNC. Now, you actually read all the court papers, and you interviewed, I think, the lawyer for the DNC. So tell us what's going on down there.
Yeah, the lawsuit was filed last year, and essentially Bernie Sanders voters, supporters filed against the DNC, claiming fraud, that they donated, in some cases, thousands of dollars, and it was fraudulent because the DNC broke its charter and bylaws, which pledges neutrality and even-handedness. So, it's kind of been laughed about among some of the political insiders, people, on the Clinton side, even some people on the Bernie side. But the hearing was last week. Both sides gave their case, and the judge was actually surprisingly tough on the DNC lawyer, asking some pretty probing questions. And the real, can't believe this was said out loud moment, the DNC attorney basically said, we didn't do this, but if we wanted to, we could go like the old days in back rooms, have a few cigars, and pick the candidate that way. He said that, some other things, basically saying there's no contractual obligation to neutrality, and there's no, really using semantic words, there's no guarantee that a candidate won't be disadvantaged. Another head scratcher was they kind of equated, of course it's the DNC, so they brought up Donald Trump in the defense.
So Jordan, let me just ask you, let me just clarify for a second. So you're telling me that the DNC's actual defense out of the mouth of their lawyer in court, when they're trying to defend themselves for being fraudulent, because the accusation is they took money from donors who thought they were gonna run a fair and even-handed primary, and they didn't. So that's fraud. You can't take a donation and say you're gonna do one thing with it and then do another. That's fraud. You can't do that. That's illegal. And so what you're telling me right now is that the DNC lawyer is actually arguing that we can do that we can take money, tell you it's gonna be in a fair and even-handed primary, and then screw you out of it, that's our prerogative to do that?
And I quote, we could have voluntarily decided that, look, we're gonna go in back rooms like they used to and smoke cigars and pick the candidate that way. So that's what he said.
And he said that in court.
Yeah,
and so
out in the open.
And so that seems like it's almost like he's arguing for the other side. It's almost like he's revealing that, yes, we were fraudulent, because that's what that is. And so that seems like a dumb argument to make. What am I missing?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is, I think what the lawyer is getting at is not like right or wrong ethics versus not, poor morality or poor ethics. I think what he's basically getting at is the most stringent legal argument he can make. I'm not a lawyer, but it doesn't even make sense legally, because in the word bylaws is laws.
Yes.
A charter. I mean, companies have charters. Organizations have charters. So I'm not gonna talk out of my ass, but if you break your charter, if you break your bylaws, you would think that there's some type of penalty, consequence, this and that. So the fact that he was saying we didn't do this, which it's been shown that they were not neutral, that's kind of like, to an objective eye, they were certainly not neutral. Even people in the party have acknowledged after the fact that it wasn't neutral. To say that out in public, it kind of, besides arrogance, it kind of leads questions to the future. If you're saying, well, we didn't do this, but technically we can. Well, what does that mean for 2020? So it's very troublesome. Besides the fact that at a time that the DNC, the Democrats, are at an all-time low in popularity, that they would say this out in the open, it certainly does not bring comfort to progressives. And I would think even people who support the DNC are kind of scratching their heads that this is what they're saying in public.
Jordan, this is Nomi. So, playing the devil's advocate here, I mean, literally the devil's advocate. I think, from his legal standpoint, he's trying to double down on the fact that this is a private party. This is not a public good organization. But what I think, in the court of law, that's an argument to be made. In the court of public opinion, it's horrifying. With that being said, I think what this does is it reinforces the fact that the Democratic Party has been doing this smoke and mirrors Democratic with a lower D game for a while, when the reality is they haven't really moved past Tammany Hall style politics. And I guess my question to you is, how is the judge responding? I mean, you said he was asking tough questions, but we all know how the legal system is incredibly political. Do we know anything about this judge? Do we know if this judge was selected by a Republican, a Democrat? Because in the end, I mean, we see this with Comey. There's a lot of politics that goes into these types of court cases. And then trial lawyers are very Democratic. So, I mean, I'm curious to see where they align politically, if you've done any of that kind of digging.
The judge asked a lot of questions about how they have run their elections in the past. He kind of looked at, dating back 2 or 3 cycles. He also asked, it was almost like a therapist on the couch. Like if I said, like, I want a girlfriend, it would be like, well, what does a girlfriend mean to you? She asked repeatedly the DNC lawyer, well, what does neutrality mean to the DNC? What is that term? What is that word? What do you think it's signifying? So there was a lot of follow-ups like that. I will say, Jimmy brought this up when I spoke with him earlier this week, but it might be a private company. But if you as a private company like do a fundraiser for someone with cancer, and I'm totally plagiarizing for Jimmy, but if you do a fundraiser for someone with cancer, and it's shown later that was a scam and they don't have cancer, right. I mean, that's fraud. So I think that's what the other side, the Bernie voter side, is claiming. And the other thing that the judge asked, which is what I just said, is, well, if you could legally do it, then what do the bylaws mean? The judge also referenced that your own chairman had gone on national television saying neutrality. So that's what I mean. Well, the judge was really probing. Whether it actually comes out that the judge will agree that legally that there's any criminality, I don't know. But the judge was not just kind of arbitrarily, condescending to the plaintiff.
I actually think that's a really interesting point, though, because having covered the DNC, one of the biggest complaints over and over with all these DNC members who've been there for decades was that, they had these amazing positions like that they'd have to run for, like vice chair and executive chair, but none of these people had any sort of authority in the Democratic Party. All of the decisions were being made unilaterally by the chairwoman and the secretary and the treasurer about where the money was going. So to see that these bylaws, people didn't have access to the budget, the budget wasn't transparent. If you're a corporation and you had a board, you'd have to do that. The fact that, the board wasn't voting on things, that wouldn't happen. Conflicts of interest, people on the board of any corporation, there would be conflicts of interest. In the Democratic Party, that's everywhere. So I think that's actually a really fascinating angle, and I'm curious to see how that evolves in the court case, because if they are a private corporation or a private organization, then they also have to forget about public. They have to follow the same rules that a corporation would. It's so interesting to me.
Hey, MSNBC just hired Megyn Kelly to make sure Santa Claus stays white. If you're sick of that kind of bullshit lefty corporatism from the news, support aggressive progressives right here at the Young Turks Network. You become a member for $10 a month. It gets you access to the whole show. We do an hour every week, and it gets you access to all the other member benefits at the Young Turks. Stick your thumb in the eye of the corporate news and become a member of TYT Network. Go to tytnetwork.com/join and find out what it's all about.